Welcome to the podcast review show. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. This is where we have somebody come on the show. Now, tonight we're doing what we call a light version. This is where we have two different versions of doing the review. You can come on in person, or you can have us review without you coming on the show. And that's what we're doing tonight. And we're going to be looking at Ageless Hockey. That's the name of the podcast from Jim Bramham, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And joining me to help us figure out what they're doing right and maybe some things they could tweak a little better is the one and only, don't be fooled by cheap imitations, Erik K. Johnson from podcasttalentcoach.com. How's it going, Erik?
It's going well. There are so many cheap imitations of me running around. I see them everywhere. It's great, Dave. Glad to be here. Looking forward to another show. I'm excited about this one. We get to talk hockey tonight. I'm pumped up.
When I saw the topic, I'm like, okay, I'm going to rely heavily on Erik for this because I live in Ohio. We had some sort of minor league. I think we still might have a minor league hockey team. I know for many years we had nothing.
I think we did. We may have. They may still be here. Like you're full on into it.
Oh yeah. And so it's to me, hockey is I turn on ESPN. They throw two guys throwing off their gloves and pounding each other, and that's about the only clip I get to see. So I know
ESPN highlights sound like my kid playing Xbox. It's like, I hear clickety, 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 click. I'm like, are you fighting again? Like there's more to the hockey game than fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my brother and myself and then my two nieces would play hockey. And that's all we did. We just beat the snot out of each other. We could care less. The puck's going down the ice. We're just
let's go.
Yeah. So the podcast we're looking at tonight is agelesshockey.com. We're going to be looking at episode number 14. And Jim had said, this is the one thing about it. Jim is definitely a guy that loves hockey. He said apparently he got into this podcasting thing for he retired from hockey, and then he kind of got back into it. He says, I got some injuries, including a concussion, which is no fun. He says, now during my recovery time off the ice, says I started the podcast to share my experiences and help others over 50 so that they can avoid injuries. I think that seems to be the running theme of why he's doing this. He wants people to not get injured, but yet, in fact, I think his tagline is to stay on the ice.
Yeah, Jim is over 50 himself, back out playing hockey, had some ankle injuries, had a concussion, and his whole goal is to help guys over 50 and ladies as well stay on the ice and continue to enjoy it as long as they possibly can.
He said he tries to make his show different. He says he makes it very clear that he's not a great player. He says, I learned a lot about what changes need to be made when we get older. And he says, I share my crash test dummy experiences. We didn't get one of those in this episode, but I'd like to hear one. He says there are equipment changes since the 1970s. He says, which I hope will help others avoid the mistakes I've made. And he says he also doesn't talk much about the NHL because this is that's how he differentiates. I'm sure there are plenty of other hockey podcasts where they talk about what's going on in the NHL, and this is different. He's trying to set himself apart. And he did say, we kind of asked him, you're like, how is the show going to be a success? I always want people to know that, because otherwise, how do you know if you're doing any good or not? And he said he wants to keep getting emails from people. He said he had one person from Japan who was 75 years old and said he started wearing his mouth guard after Jim had said that his mouth guard had saved his teeth when my head hit the ice and cracked his helmet. See right there, when I hear cracking helmets, I'm like, that's why I don't play hockey.
That's what makes it fun right there. Yeah, it's all about audience reaction for Jim. He really wants his audience to be entertained and inspired to stay on the ice, but he really wants them to not only be entertained and get valuable information on every episode. He wants to hear from that audience. He wants to get emails from his listeners and find ways to help them and hear from his audience that so he knows that he's helping them. So if he can receive more emails from listeners and help them avoid major injuries, he's saying that's what makes his podcast a success. And that's what's different about tonight's show. We don't have Jim on with us. Jim had the option, come on or don't come on. And Jim said, You guys just review it without me. I'll listen online. We said, that's all good. And you can do that. There's 2 versions of it. Like Dave was saying, you can come on and join us. And that helps us tremendously because we can ask you questions. So tonight, as we go through Jim's podcast here, there's going to be times where Dave and I will need to make some assumptions and figure out why Jim was doing the things he was doing. And we'll do our best. We'll give some feedback here, and with any luck, help Jim make his podcast, Ageless Hockey, a little bit better.
And we're going to start off here with the first minute and a half.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm a baby boomer that loves playing hockey. Welcome to Ageless Hockey Podcast, episode number 14. Today's main topic is how to deal with not being able to play hockey. In this episode, I'll talk about my apology to Bauer, over 60 Spring League, why aren't you playing hockey, and how to deal with it. Does this really matter when buying new skates? I owe Bauer an apology. I said that the footbeds that came with my Bauer Supreme S180 skates were garbage. Well, this really isn't true. They're not bad, but they're just not the quality I expected for a $500 pair of skates. Bauer has their speed plate footbeds, and if you go on Amazon or other places, they're about $50. I'm assuming they're only included with the top line skates that they offer. That might be $700 to the $1,000, but I don't think $500 is a drop in the bucket either. I guess my suggestion to Bauer would be to give a discount code to people purchasing their skates in the $300 to $600 range.
And so he's jumping right into his topic, and there's not a lot of is that train horn? Is that the sound of some hockey thing?
Yes. When they score the goal, the horn goes off.
Okay, there we go. So I figured as much.
Bauer's an equipment manufacturer. They make not only skates, but helmets and gloves and sticks. And they're one of the primary long-time hockey manufacturers for equipment.
Yeah. So he kind of gives us a table of contents when he starts off there, and not really much about like what the show is. I mean, he kind of gives us, I think, one sentence maybe about, it's for people that are over 50 wanting to be on. Does he even mention that? I'm trying to think about that. I also want to play it again.
Yeah, it's like one line.
Yeah.
He jumps in, he gives you one line, and then he moves along. Like it's pretty quick. It's just about, being over 50, and he's a baby boomer, and he's talking to people about how to stay on the ice.
Yeah. So that's quick. My only his audio sounds fine, but the thing that threw me for a loop is he gives his table of contents, and there's a certain timing for that. So it was kind of like topic A, and then we're going to talk about this, and I owe so-and-so an apology, and I need this and this and that, as well as such and such and such and such. And then he goes back and says, I owe so-and-so an apology. And I'm thinking, wait, you just said that a minute ago. And then he just keeps going. And I didn't realize that like he had transitioned into like the first topic. So that was one for me that I was kind of like, oh, wait, we're into it now. So,
oh, we're going already. Okay.
Yeah. Did you have that kind of same?
I did. And quite a bit through the show, because his transitions were very abrupt like that. Like it was headline and then he went rolling. But with regard to the introduction, I got to tell you, when I hit play on it, I was in my car, I hit play, and then I started going, and it took a minute for it to call up because I'm using my phone. I'm using cell signal. So I start driving, and all of a sudden it's, hi, I'm Jim. And I was like, whoa, what just happened there? Like that was so unique. Podcasts just don't start like that, which that's what I love about Jim on this podcast. It's just Jim and I having a conversation. He is very one-to-one. There wasn't any group speak in this. It's not, all right, everybody, email me or anything like that. He's talking to one person, and he did it better than anybody I've ever heard, which is fantastic for not having a background in what he does. And he gets on and he says, today's episode, we're talking about how to deal with not being able to play hockey anymore, which one sentence, that's what you'll find about Jim. He's pretty straight to the point. There's not a whole lot of fluff in this episode. He hits it and then he moves on. And as I listen throughout the episode, he's kind of like that get off my lawn, cantankerous old man in a lot of the episode, which I love how now he feels bad about it. Like he goes, yeah, I need to apologize to Bauer. Like Bauer's going, that dang Jim, he badmouthed our skate inserts, and he feels bad and has to apologize, which I love. That just makes him endearing. It made him such a warm and lovable guy. Like it's almost like Sipowicz on NYPD Blue, where he's just, the guy's just so rude. You're supposed to hate him, but there's that side of him, and you just kind of, you feel for him and you love him for it. And that's kind of what I got out of this episode by hanging with Jim for one episode.
Yeah, I have in my notes here, especially the beginning of it sounded a little bit like a diary, because he was talking about, I thought it was kind of cool about the 4-minute mark. He talks about, that's when he kind of gets into not playing hockey. And he said, I'm not dealing with this very well, because he's got an ankle injury and things of that nature. And I just thought it was kind of cool that he was kind of being vulnerable there, being honest. And, not, some people won't, because again, this is a big, tough hockey guy. So for him to go, yeah, I'm not handling this well. Now, granted, he's talking about, I don't get to go play hockey, but again, just any kind of vulnerability, I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, he said when he misses a game, he feels really bad and starts missing it. Now he's been off for weeks because of this ankle injury, and it's driving him crazy. Yeah,
the beginning of it, there are parts of it, again, that were a little bit like a diary, where he was talking just about different things. About he went to the Bauer thing, and then he went into how to deal with not being able to play. And there were times when I remember he was talking about he made and they always had good points, like maybe you're taking care of your parents, because again, if you're older, well, then your parents are older. And he was kind of like, well, maybe you fell down, or maybe you got hurt, or maybe, and I've kind of felt like we're in a Bubba Gump kind of area there, where maybe you got hurt, maybe you fell down the steps, maybe you tripped over a ladder, or maybe you fell off the curb. Maybe I was like, okay, I get the point. We're hurt.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure that all of this was gonna kind of like, I was kind of like, okay, what's the point, I guess, in a way. I wasn't sure how.
As I listened to the episode, I got a little of that, not really sure. Today we're going to talk about how to deal with not being able to play hockey. And he got into a lot of stories about him not being able to play hockey and what he's doing to kind of handle that situation. But I'm not sure, as a listener, I got out of this episode what I could do to handle not being able to play hockey. Because, I played last night, and I got to tell you, this morning, it took me a minute to get out of bed. My back was pretty tight and pretty stiff because I have a bad back, but that doesn't keep me off the ice. Now, I take a wrong turn or get twisted up, and all of a sudden, next morning I'm feeling it. And so, I completely understand what Jim's talking about, but not being able to play hockey, as a listener, what's in it for me? What am I going to take away? And I think that's one thing that would really help Jim, as he's thinking through his episodes. I love the stories that he's telling. I love the story of his fight with being able to stay on the ice as much as he can. But we need to turn the camera around and face it at our listener now, and give them some tips and tricks that they can use, maybe to deal with not being able to be on the ice.
Yeah, he had there was some great advice in it. I've got a tip here where he talks about listening to your doctor.
A word of caution, I've talked about this before, is after your surgery, listen to your surgeon. Follow his rehab or her rehab program carefully. If they tell you to be careful for the first 2 months, don't go golfing in 2 weeks like a player in our league did. It's been over a year, and he still isn't on the ice. He came back too early. After a couple weeks, he went golfing after a hip replacement. Doctor told him not to do anything for a couple months, but he didn't listen to him.
And what was interesting is that was the end of his story there, and he went into something right after it. We're talking about his transitions there, and to me, he said, he wouldn't listen. To me, I think you can do more with your voice to show that this is the end of the segment. Something to kind of cue that we're moving on there or something, because it was like, he's like, but he didn't listen. And then bam, into another subject. And I was kind of like, oh, I guess we're done talking about that.
Yeah, and it wasn't really a natural segue because he said, but he didn't listen. I need to apologize to Bauer. And I'm like, what just happened there? It wasn't that particular headline, but he almost had headlines rather than natural segues, as you would if you were at a cocktail party having a discussion, but he wouldn't listen. Hey, I need to tell you about Bauer. I need to apologize to Bauer. Last week I said, when you kind of naturally change your cadence, a little break there, a little pause, little fluctuation in the tone of your voice, so people kind of get the sense that, oh, we're on to a next subject. He would just use these headline sort of statements, which kind of felt abrupt. So I'd kind of suggest that he tweak those a little bit and make them more of a natural segue rather than this abrupt headline sort of thing.
Yeah, he did, just to piggyback on his advice here about the doctor at the end, he even mentioned how at the end he said when he hurt his ankle, he did it in like the middle of the game and then played like another period. And he said, looking back, I shouldn't have done that. I was hurt. I'm not an NHL player. I should have just got off the ice, but I didn't want to let my team down. And looking back, that's stupid. And now he talks about how the fact that he keeps going back to get his ankle checked, and they're like, yeah, it's just going to take a little while longer. And yeah, it's going to take a little while longer. So he had some really good advice.
Yeah, that was the second shift of the game. He got hurt. He said they were already down 1-0. His team needed him. The bench was already short. And, he felt he needed to stay out there. But he goes, I'm not making millions of dollars. There's not a guy behind me waiting to take my spot on the roster and cost me millions of dollars in contract fees. I should have just taken it to the locker room when I got injured, but I didn't. And now he's out.
Yeah. So I thought that was a cool, again, kind of inside story of at the core of what he's trying to do. He's trying to help people to avoid, going through what he's doing. I thought I had a clip of it, but I don't. He had a great story about a goalie that used to come to practice in a pickup truck.
Yep.
And would just throw his gear in the back of the pickup truck, and he'd bring it in and be all frozen because he just apparently never took it out of his truck. And he's like, aren't you worried about somebody stealing his gear? And his goalie's like, nah, it's old. Who's going to want to, wear this stuff? Well, I'm not sure where they're at, but it's somewhere where apparently hockey is very popular because the guy lost his stuff. And then
who leaves their stuff in the back of a pickup truck? I mean, come on. Yeah, I got to tell you, I know so many guys that have had their gear stolen out of their car. And I'm like, who wants smelly, sweaty hockey gear? It gets ripped off all the time. My brother used to drive a Jeep Wrangler and had his gear in the back, and it was dark. The windows were tinted. It was under a blanket and stuff. Somebody slit the back window and got in and stole his gear. And it's crazy how many people. You're not going to be able to sell sweaty, stinky gear on eBay, but have at it.
Ew, yeah, that's but that he kind of went through that. He's like, you think it's a hassle to whatever, bring it in the house or whatever you're going to do with it. And he said, but he didn't realize that the hassle it is to go back, even if you're going to some kind of used place like eBay or Play It Again Sports. And then you forget that you got to bring your pads to get your pants to fit right and just all the hassle. So I thought that was an interesting story. And
it was a great tip because his point was, the gear might not be worth a whole lot, but having to replace it is going to cost you a ton of money. So even though it's a pain in the neck to take it out of the truck and throw it in the garage, you probably ought to do it because you're saving yourself a ton of time. And, Dave, to your point, it's wise advice. There were bits and pieces of that sort of sage advice throughout the entire episode, which I appreciated.
Yeah, here's another example of one. And I thought this was a great example. If you ever want people to go to your website, this is how you do it.
So I Googled this the other day, and found a video called Quick Trick to Tie Your Hockey Skate Laces Tighter, Reduce Foot Slippage. So I'll have this video. It's only 1 minute and 23 seconds in the show notes at agelesshockey.com/14. I laced my skates the way this video showed, and it seemed to help. Even when I was done skating, I was out there 50 minutes without stopping. My skates were still pretty tight, although it's different than playing in a game where you're going back and forth, doing a lot more stops and starts than open skating. But I'm going to keep trying this. But if you like your skates tight like I do, maybe you give this a shot.
And so when I heard that, I was like, well, now I want to go watch the video.
I actually did. My son fights to get his skates as tight as he can, and I pulled that video up and I said, "Hey, buddy, check this out." And I showed it to him, and he's like, "Man, I need to try that." So yeah, it's a great tease. He gave us enough information that we wanted to go see it, and told us what was in it for us, and then told us how to go get it.
Yeah, and then made it easy as well.
Yeah.
It's not agelesshockey.com/try-and-spell-this.
HTML.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah. £, etc.
What's that little squiggly thing called? The
tilde.
The tilde. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
This one, I was kind of like, okay, but I thought it was interesting because he comes across, he says, all right, it's an old fart moment. Oops, that's the wrong button. Here we go.
I love this one.
I have to give you a caution. The following is an old fart alert. Don't skate with your hands in your pockets. I saw this yesterday at open skating. There was a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend. They looked like they were 19, 20 years old, and both of them could hardly stand up on the ice. And they were skating a little bit, but almost like somebody walking on skates. And they both had their hands in their pockets. Now, I can remember doing this, especially in high school, open skating, and probably just look cool. I don't know. Well, if you think about it, when you play hockey, you don't have your hands in your pockets. So don't skate with your hands in your pockets, because if you lose your balance, you hit a bump in the ice or someone cuts in front of you, you don't have your balance. You're going to lose it. So if you have your hands in your pockets and something happens, good luck.
I love that. Good luck. So the only part that made me, on one hand, again, you hear his passion for helping people not to get hurt on the ice. That's his main point. But he even says, if you're playing hockey, you're not skating with your hands in your pockets. And I'm like, well, isn't the target audience here people that are playing hockey? So like, you're telling them to not put their hands in their pocket. And I just pictured his whole audience going, why would I put my hands in my pocket? I got my hands on my stick. So that was the only part that I was kind of confused. What were your thoughts on that little segment?
To your point, hockey players do go open skating sometimes, so it's a good point. But this is the point in the episode where I turned. So up to this point, you see, the thing about it, Jim has a lot of negativity in the show. You know, he's almost like the get off my lawn guy, because we're talking about his hurt foot. We're talking about the guy with the hip replacement. He talks about his investments crashing. He talks about caring for 6 parents or spouses, and that's why you can't play, or you're too old to play. And then he hits this point where he talks about old fart moment. And then he says, talks about stop skating with your hands in your pockets. You're going to fall on your face. And then he talks about wearing earbuds while you're skating. I don't even do that while I'm riding a bike or walking. I could fall. And then he starts talking about how open skating in general is dangerous. And that's when I started liking the fact that he was this cantankerous old man, because he's just like, there's the dark cloud over everything. He's talking about wearing safety socks to protect his Achilles tendon when he's skating to prevent injury. And he got a knot in the lace and dang it. And now he needs to keep a kit on the bench in case he gets a knot again. And I'm thinking, Jim, you got one knot in 50 years. Now you're going to keep a kit on the bench? Like, come on, bud, relax a minute. And he talks about his ankle injury, and damn it, his skates don't fit. And skates are expensive nowadays. I can't believe how high gear prices are. And it's just, I think what Jim needs to do is just crank up that old fart sort of
back
mentality.
In my day.
Yes, exactly. and let that character even even become bigger, like larger than life, taking it even higher to a full on get off my lawn sort of guy. Like, just complain about everything and like over the top, because that would almost add some fantastic humor to the whole thing. Because he's lovable in that way. And it was this part right here where he says old fart moment, and he actually recognizes the fact that that's what he's doing.
Right.
That made me start loving him for it. And I thought it was great because I mean, he starts. I buy gear for my son. He's a goalie, so I go in to buy. Dave, how much do you think goalie leg pads run?
I say
not high enough. It's about they were about $1,500.
No.
Yeah.
Literally, I was going to guess like 50 for a set of two.
Yeah, right. No, 1,500. And I got them on sale for $750, and it's like gear is crazy expensive. And if you're not in there buying it all the time, when I coach, I wear these. It's funny. I went on to Jim's website, which we'll get to in a minute, and he has his old gear laying next to his new gear. And the old gear of Cooper shin pads that he has are probably from 1984. I have that exact same pair, and I wear them when I'm coaching because they go under my warm-up pants. They fit. The new big shin pads that actually protect, they don't fit under my pants. So I wear these old Cooper shin pads that I have to tape onto my legs. And the kids make fun of me. They're like, Coach, where'd you get those? Goodwill. And I'm like, man, these are older than your parents. Like, relax. All right. And they're awesome. But unless you're in, if I was still using those and I'd go to buy shin pads today, they're crazy expensive compared to where they were years ago, which I find entertaining that he's, complaining that skates are expensive and gear prices are too high and that they shouldn't charge me $50 for skate inserts. And I'm like, well, that's how Bauer makes their money, selling more gear to you. They make you believe you need the neck protector. And so I love that. I love the fact that he's that guy. And I would like to see him crank it up even a little bit more.
Yeah, I just love the fact that he opened and was like, all right, we're going to do an old fart moment. I was like, all right. I like the attitude of that. So
the thing I love about Jim's show in general is his one-to-one nature. We talked about that before. He would start telling a story and he would say, I think I've told you this before. And he would go into the story. And I felt like, he's talking to me just like I would with an old friend. I don't know if I've told you this story before. And then he would roll into it. And it was like, that's exactly what you would say if you were sitting at the bar with your buddy and you can't remember whether or not you told him the story. That he does personal one-on-one perfectly. And it's such a nice touch. And I think that's what makes him so likable and so endearing as a host.
Yeah, that's like I said, the beginning of it sounded like a diary. It was just him talking about his injury and his foot and everything like that. And I felt like, again, he was just sitting across the table from me, explaining what was going on. And he had his bullet points. I don't think he was reading. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. The headlines definitely were being read.
Yeah.
And that might have just been in his outline. And then he may have had some notes that he talked about because the rest of it felt pretty natural.
Yeah.
It's just when he would get to a headline, he would read a headline and then go. And I don't know if maybe he recorded them in segments and edited them together. Maybe that's why it was so tight. Not really sure. He tells some great stories throughout the episode and adds some great detail, puts us right there in the moment, which I thought was great. At the end, he does a little something about me. And like that was the headline, right? He tells the story and he finishes, and that's why you need to listen to your doctor. Here's something about me. And then I'm like, whoa, we just snap right into it. And it's a great story that he has at the end. And I love the fact that he's including stuff about him. It lets us get to know him and create this relationship with him. I like that part of it, but I wasn't really sure what the point of the story at the end was, other than the fact that he's just letting us know some information about him. But what did he want me to take away from that story? He talks about his ankle and it being injured and on the recovery, but I wasn't really sure, like, okay, why I don't understand why we told the story. So I was a little confused with that. But overall, I love the stories. I love his one-on-one nature. I love the detail that he includes.
Yeah, and even with that story, he started talking about how he got involved with some sort of computer company, and then when that folded, he tried a web development company for a while, websites. He goes, I don't know anything about that, and then he ended up going to another company. So it was interesting just to learn the history of him. But I'm kind of with you. I got the feeling that somebody's like he went to some podcasting conference and they said, you need to talk about yourself.
Right.
So,
you need to tell your audience a little something about yourself, because he started getting into that. Here's my career. Like,
yeah.
I've worked for 45 years and what I was doing and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, where's this going? And then he talks about his ankle injury. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with where you just worked? So not really sure if it's just maybe he ends every episode with a little bit about me kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen the story kind of dovetail more into the career or what we were talking about, or I don't know. It felt like three pieces kind of duct taped together.
Yeah. But here's how he wrapped up the show.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember what's important. Have fun, try to avoid injuries, and make new friends. Let me know how you handled not being able to play hockey. Please share my podcast with friends and other players. For information on how to subscribe, go to agelesshockey.com/subscribe. Show notes for this episode are located at agelesshockey.com/14. You can also leave a comment at this location. My email is jim@agelesshockey.com. I just want to let you know that I'll reply to all emails. I may also mention your feedback, question, or anything else you put in the email along with your name on a podcast. If you don't want your name mentioned on a podcast, please let me know in your email. Please visit agelesshockey.com for more information. I value your time and appreciate all of you that have subscribed to my podcast. Thanks for listening. Have fun playing the greatest game on earth. Stay on the ice.
And the beauty of it is he then didn't play a bunch of music for the sake of nothing. So I was
yay. But he did have 17 calls to action. So
yeah, just a few.
There was that. You know, when he at the end there, he says such and such and such and make new friends. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. I was like, wow, that was a nice little bow on the end of it. Like, nice, perfect, solid finish. And then all of a sudden he starts up again and he let me know how you're handling not playing, and tell a friend about the show and subscribe to the show and check out the show notes and leave us a comment and email us and go check out the website. I mean, that's 7 different things he wants me to do. And had I not written them down, I wouldn't have remembered half of them. So, it's not just Jim. This is a comment we make to nearly every guest we have here on the podcast review show. Pick the one call to action that you want your audience to do and make that the call to action. This is my next episode coming out of Podcast Talent Coach, how to make an effective call to action. That's the entire episode. We're going to talk about what makes an effective call to action and why it should only be one, because you're already making your audience member make a decision to act. Now you don't want to have them decide which act to take. If they have to make too many decisions, they're just not going to make any decision at all. So make it as easy as possible. Give them one thing to do and then have them go do that. You want to sell them on doing that one thing. You cannot possibly sell them on doing 7 things. So let's tighten it up. Let's pick the one thing. You can rotate that one thing. That one thing can be different every show. You can put your other one thing in the middle of the show, but at the end, tell them what to do next, make it that one thing, and then send them to go do that one thing. Otherwise, they're just not going to decide. It's like your to-do list. My wife leaves me, there's 17 things. I'm like, I'm going to get in trouble because they're not all done. So why am I going to do any of them? I'm going to go watch the football game.
Yeah. It reminds me, it's easier said than done, because I remember when I was, I've done different projects, and you'll define a project for a customer. We're going to do A, B, C. and then they grade and you get paid for A, B, and C, and they go, oh, can we do D? And you're like, all right, we can do D. And then you start working on, oh, can we do just one more thing? And that's the thing. You keep adding just one more thing. And next thing you know, you've got 7 calls to action, and it's really easy to do that. But that's exactly what Erik's saying. It's like you need to figure out, what do you want your audience to do? And for the record, I do want to mention here, since we're talking about that, ratings and reviews do nothing to put you up the charts.
Right.
Those are social proof. Subscribing will help, but ratings and I hear so many people just keep repeating that. Oh, it helps us get found. No, it doesn't.
I don't know who told you that, but that's not true.
That is not true. That's everybody's favorite call to action. But
so my recommendation to Jim in his little synopsis that he sent us, as we talked about at the very beginning of tonight's episode, the one thing he wants his audience to do that will let him know his podcast has been a success is that he receives more emails from his listeners. So that's the one thing he wants them to do. So there's no reason for him to go to the show notes or leave us a comment or check out the website. I can understand subscribe, but if you want your audience to email you, make that the call to action. Tell them to email you and call it good.
Yeah, and he's got an easy button. If we switch over to his website, let me share my screen here real quick. He's got a fairly simple, nothing too crazy on his website. He's got a menu system that goes across the top. You've got podcast, about, start here, subscribe, contact, equipment, beginner players, playing hockey, and then resources. And
that is an old school net there in the upper left. That is classic. That is old time hockey.
And so if you're looking like, how do I contact him? Well, it's pretty easy. There's a button there that says contact. And so when you click on that, it's super easy. He's got his email address there. Every page, I think he says, have fun playing the greatest game on earth and stay on the ice. He's got a nice start here button.
That is my favorite part of this entire website. Start here. First time to the website, you click start here. It's everything you need to know about the website right there.
I like that idea. I've seen, I think Pat Flynn does that, because when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I need the start here button.
That is awesome. 2 things I love about this website, the start here button and the fact that it's nice and clean and white, just like a fresh sheet of ice. Looks great.
Yeah. The only thing, and it's not a bad thing, there's no sidebar.
There is no sidebar. It is just like a sheet of paper. That's it.
And then he's got,
I kind of like, it's not cluttered up with a lot of ads and distractions. If you're on a page, that's what you get. Like this equipment page right here, this is all you get. You come to this page, you get hockey equipment. There's not a whole lot of, affiliate links or ads on the left or ads on the right or any of that. Okay, there's those shin pads right there. See those Coopers?
Oh my goodness.
Those are old school. And I probably had a pair of those shoulder pads up there too. Look at the shoulder pads back then.
Yeah.
They're like toilet paper. And then the shoulder pads on the right are like a suit of armor.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yep. Wore it all.
But he's got some nice resources here in terms of, how to play hockey. So I guess if you're absolutely new to hockey, he's got some things on here. I love the fact that he says, are you too old to play hockey? He talks about some guy named Mark Sertich, who's 96 years old and continues to play the sport he loves. I'm like, who's going to check a 96-year-old?
There's no checking in adult hockey. That doesn't mean there's no contact. That just means there's no checking.
Right. It's like you broke Martin in half, or Mark, or whatever his name was.
Yeah. That's why I don't go out and play with 20-year-olds. I'm like, dude, I got to work tomorrow. I can't. There's no. Yeah. You're 20. I'm not.
But he's got a resource page with links to all sorts of other stuff. So if you
I love the bottom of this page right here. Go all the way down to the bottom. Caution. Caution. If you're consult a doctor before you get on the ice. Like you're old, go talk to your doctor and get cleared before you go out and play. Just because you're wearing your gear doesn't mean you're indestructible.
Yeah, I do that anytime I do a weight loss show, and anytime I talk about exercise, I have to go, okay, here's the disclaimer. You know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trainer, so exercise at your own risk. His about page, I think, does a decent job of explaining why he's doing the show. I'm trying to see if it really explains. Yeah, my goal to encourage men and women to start, continue, or resume playing hockey. So, I'm not sure that it'd be interesting if it said, you know, in the past we've talked about such and such, but then you're driving people away from your about page. But there's this crash test dummy. I'll have to ask him what he means by that. But I thought it was nice. He has a picture of him in his gear, just to kind of tie it back to, I guess, some street cred. You know, he's not a guy that is just talking about hockey. He's out there playing it. And do you know who Dave Lewis is?
I do not.
Okay, because he's at the Dave Lewis fantasy camp, and I'm like, I'm going to guess that's a cool thing.
You know, there aren't a lot of old time hockey guys that I know. Like, oh, you remember? You know, I know the big names, but I didn't follow hockey closely enough to know every single guy. My kid plays Xbox. He can tell you every player and every team they play for because he's playing them and trading them every day with Xbox. I don't know it all.
Yeah, but I like the fact that he's got a subscribe button with it kind of explains how to subscribe. He's got a thing at the bottom how to listen. So, and the other thing that I tested, this website looks really good on a phone, because I was worried about that, because I thought, you know, the menus at the top are a little small in terms of how tall the letters are. And I thought, boy, I bet that's going to look like crap on a phone. And it's actually the direct opposite. It worked really good on a phone. So all in all, I was like, well, there's not really much to talk about here on, oh, great. Edit point one.
Are you talking to Alexa again?
Yeah. Alexa, stop.
She comes on every episode. We don't even say her name. And
well, the problem is I have that. So it's 11 o'clock. She just told me to go to bed because she knows that means I'll probably go to bed in about 90 minutes.
You no longer have a wife, so somebody's not telling you to go to bed. Now you have Alexa doing it. That's awesome.
Because otherwise I'll look up, oh crap, it's 1:45. I should have gone to bed.
Dave needs somebody to tell him what to do. So he bought Alexa.
That's it.
That's awesome.
I needed a bossy woman around the house too.
You know, one thing I love about this website, the use of color. He doesn't use a lot of color, but when he does, it's for the right reasons. Like, scroll down here. Let's go back to the subscribe. Go back to the subscribe tab, and like free, great color. Then Apple Podcast, Android, and RSS. The only color on the page to draw your attentions to the right headlines, and that's it. Otherwise, it's hot links and black and white text.
Yeah.
The color is sparse and used where it's appropriate.
Yeah. Makes it easy.
I like the website. I think it really looks good. There isn't a whole lot I would change.
Yeah. And we're back. Okay. I'm just like, oh, I always worry because there's a stop sharing button. And I'm like, did I just end the thing?
And stop broadcast. Whoops, wrong one.
Yes, doggone it. But all in all, agelesshockey.com. The biggest thing for me, I would work on his transitions. That was the thing that I was like, you know, what were your thoughts, Eric?
Transitions would be my big one in terms of the content. I think I would love to see him play up that character of the get off my lawn guy, you know, just because, you know, as we get older, you know, I got to stop saying, you know, well, back in my day, or, you know, back in the day, because I'm thinking, man, how old do I sound when I say, have you seen the commercial on TV? I'm becoming my dad. And he's like, what are we, air conditioning the whole neighborhood? Like, I'm like, yep, I said that. Yeah, I said that. Yep, I've said that. Like, I feel like that's what I'm becoming, but it's such a part of our society today that, and I love the fact that he makes fun of himself for being that every now and then. And That is what I found entertaining. I don't know if he does it in every episode, but I think that might make his podcast stand out a little bit. I love his one-on-one connection with the audience, but using some natural segues rather than headlines, I think would make the content flow a little better and clean up the call to action at the end.
Yeah, that was because even if you don't, I'm always a big fan of putting music in as a transition. That's an easy one. But if not, you even mentioned earlier, just a little bit of space. If you just finished one story and said, and so he didn't pay attention to his doctor and now he's paying for it. Now I want to talk about, and not even now I want to talk about, just like, and then go to your next section. You might also look at the topics you're going to talk about and see if there's any way that you can does one transition into the other one? That might help you rearrange your topics, because you might say, well, talking about being safe, I was at the skating rink the other day doing some free skating, and there's these guys skating around with their hands in their pockets. Is there some way to just make those transition? That might be a little easier as well, instead of
it's very helpful if you write out your transitions prior to recording. So you know what the out is going to be of the one segment and what the introduction is going to be at the next segment. So you don't start using, now it's time to talk about X. It's like, and now he's really paying for it. Hey, do you remember when I told you about the time we did the thing, and then you just kind of naturally transition into the next story? And if you write those out ahead of time and read over them, when you get to the transition part, don't read it. But the fact that you've written it out will help you make that transition a lot smoother.
And if you want to check out Jim's podcast again, it's at agelesshockey.com. You can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. Erik, where can people find you?
Find me over at podcasttalentcoach.com. We're working on revamping the website right now. New and improved, coming soon.
Ooh.
Yeah. My favorite. So find me over there, podcasttalentcoach.com. And if you want to be on the show, we would love to have you. We would say sitting right here in Jim's seat, but Jim's not here tonight. But we would love to have you right here. It's super easy. Just head over to podcastreviewshow.com/review me, and we can surely get you on the show. And we'd love to talk about your podcast right here and expose it to all of the people listening to the show. So come on by and see us.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Podcast Review Show.